taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Augmented Reality podcast for February 15th, 2019, day after Valentine's Day. Hope everybody had a great day yesterday. Whether you're single or whether you're with somebody, I hope you played lots of video games. And I am here as always with Cybsidian. How you doing, sir?
An important thing to remember on Valentine's Day is that couples who play together stay together. So I always encourage everybody to play a couple games with their significant other. Now,
it must be true.
This is
it rhymes.
Chess or checkers or taking each other out and whatever battle royale game you happen to be playing at the moment, or playing together. Sticking together as a team that works too.
Yeah, nothing says true love like murdering each other in PUBG.
I was gonna say that, but the definition of love is when you have a target in your scope and it's like 400, 500 meters out, and you make a knee shot. Perfect. Just
holy crap!
Love.
That's so cruel, though. Just go for the head. Taking out someone's knee. That is. I think one of the more painful ways. If you're gonna blow out their knee and then leave them to bleed to death on the battlefield, just go for the head. It's the more compassionate option, I think. So anyway, welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast, your source for news, leaks, and insights about games in the gaming industry. As I said, it's February 15th, and I've already introduced us, so that takes care of that. So if you're listening live today, please say hello in the live chat. Send us your questions and comments there as well. We will read and respond to as many as we can throughout the podcast, and don't forget to slam that like button. It likes it rough, and it tells us and YouTube that you appreciate this bi-weekly content. If you're listening after the fact on one of the audio-only platforms, we're glad you're here as well. We appreciate the likes and follows. It does take us a day or two to get the podcast up on those platforms, so if you want the latest news sooner, we recommend you hit the link in the description to subscribe to the Triple S League YouTube channel. And we're expanding a bit. We've got memberships coming soon that are going to include some custom emoji and some Discord roles and things like that. We'll give you more details once we've sorted those out in more detail. But yeah, exciting stuff happening and tons of news to talk about today. Hello to Dark Hollow, Bluntman, Murden, and Overlord 580. The chat is quiet today. That's okay. But yeah, it's been kind of crazy. I know I didn't get the announcements out as early as I usually do, and you might notice there's a bit of a discrepancy between the thumbnail today and the main stories we're actually talking about, because things got switched around at the last minute and there was news dropping and all kinds of fun stuff happened today. So it's one of those days.
We also had this stream up, and by the way, that's an HK47 reference about the kneecap thing. So I'm not
okay. I have no idea what that is. I know what an HK47 is, but yeah. Anyway, all right. So many games dropped today and over the past couple of days, and we're going to talk about some of them. So definitely stay tuned for that. We had Cyb was playing Anthem for quite a few hours this morning, live streaming that. I know some of you tuned in. I believe Bluntman, you were there. And we also had, how many games have released like in the past 24 hours? We had Metro Exodus. We had the Civ 6 expansion. We had that,
which is really good, by the way. Like Civ 6, if you guys are into strategy games at all, the new changes. I know it's a lot. It's like $60, and there's not a metric ton of new content added to the game. However, it is really decent. It's really good. I think it's not $60. It's like $55 or lower, depending on your currency. Mm-hmm. So it's not a full price, but it is pretty up there. But if you're a fan of the series, the things that they've added to the game make it a brand new experience, like completely new experience for me playing. I have never, ever gotten to the Atomic Age and had had an alliance with any civilization ever that I had known since like the classical era. Just had never worked out. Every game I play, doesn't matter the difficulty, one thing leads to another. It's a little bit of my play style, but it's also like the way the AI works. It's just it devolves into a constant state of war almost immediately. And for whatever reason, my first Civ game that I played straight out of the box in the last like 36 hours, they were nice. The NPCs, the AI were nice, were kind, were constantly wanting to develop positive relations. Once they had those relations, they kept encouraging them. They just give me gold for no reason, or if I was suffering from a catastrophe as far as like because Mother Nature plays a big role into the game this time. It's one thing led to another, and it was just a constant state of I was allied with pretty much every Civ the whole way to Atomic Era.
Now,
and that's never happened to me before.
Question.
I've always been like...
Were all of your enemies Canada?
No. Canada wasn't even on the map this time, which was kind
Canada.
of weird.
It was undercover Canada. They were all undercover Canada.
Yeah,
they had
clearly
secretly taken over the world. We just want to spread Canadian values and hockey the world over. It was
really strange in the way that it completely changed the game for me. Like as far as like the play style. Now I haven't finished it. I did reach what essentially would be a cultural victory if I was playing with a cultural victory on, but I disabled the cultural victory because I just wanted domination. Winning, oh, for crying out loud. Even though that's the winning system is domination, and I plan on dominating the entire planet.
I can't tell if you're talking about reality of the game anymore.
Yeah, I know. But it was really strange in the format and the way that it's led up to it. So it's really interesting. Definitely worth checking out if you're into that kind of a thing. It is a 4K game, and I also play on marathon. So like I'm 670 some odd turns into the game, 700 almost, and it's like really good. There's just a ton of content there. Cool. Now I really like I like 3 of the new Civs, hands down. Really great experience. Technically 4 because one is technically 2 Civs at the same time. A great experience, like a great experience playing as those new Civs. Really changes up the game, makes things really interesting, opens up a lot of avenues for new gameplay, that kind of stuff. So yeah, check it out if you're into that. So we don't really cover it too much because it's not a massive game, especially when it comes down to like guides and stuff. It's just, it doesn't really have very much like content there. The fun is in like, reacting to it, and it's more or less kind of like an experience driven game. So we don't do a ton of content for it. I am thinking about trying to find a way to do some of the game modes. There is actually a couple new game modes that they've added to it that I haven't tried out yet, that I will get around to trying out. There's a Black Plague version, which looks really interesting, but the way that they've factored in Mother Nature, and it's not preachy either. Like when I first heard, it's going to feature global warming and like all this stuff, I've been like, great, I'll have nothing but Civs like screaming at me, because I always run like production high Civs. Like every single city always gets a factory and an industrial sector, and always gets a factory. That's just flat out what I go for every single time. I don't think I've ever had a city in any of my games that does not have a production center. Production is always huge. I kind of gear my Civ that way, and then I focus in on it, and that's it, period. And I stick with that the whole way through. So yeah, there's something to be said for that. So,
but I mean, if you want to see Cyb stream some of the new game modes or some content on that, let us know. Check out our Discord channel. You can find the link in the HTK just built a wall. That seems like the answer to everything. Check out the link in our and the description below to our Discord channel. You can chat at us there and tell us what you want to see on the channel. Bluntman asks, can we expect on the channel the company for Canada with comments? I'm not entirely sure what you mean. So yeah, if you want to maybe just rephrase the question, I'm not entirely understanding what you're asking there.
I might normally be able to figure that out, but I am running on like 2 hours of sleep in the last 48 hours, so it's not easy.
So more games, tons of games have come out over the past couple of days. So I wish I could tell you all about Metro Exodus, because I am planning to. I was planning to stream it this morning, but I have been having nothing but trouble with the Epic Games Store. My download, like I as soon as it unlocked last night, which was around midnight, you know, I set the game up downloading, went to bed, and the download stalled overnight at 35%, and then this morning I have been restarting the download. I have had to quit out and reopen the Epic Games Store. I did it at least 10 to 12 times because, you know, it would download for a little while, would download a couple of gigabytes, sometimes less than a gigabyte, and then the download would just quit. And like it would still say downloading, but there was 0 bytes going through, and so I'd have to close out of the Epic Store and restart it again. So it's still not entirely downloaded, so that's been really frustrating. So I wish I could tell you about that one, but unfortunately have not been able to. But I will be producing content for that as soon as I get it up and running. But Anthem as well was it was early access.
It's the early access, and if you have premium, which I do not normally, which let me make it clear, the only reason why I would get premium subscription for EA Access is if I was pretty much forced to, and that's what they've essentially done. I'm not a fan of it. It's dirty, it's scummy, it's because if you're Prime, you get to play the game like nonstop for the next week ahead of the launch, like straight out. Now, there's not a big rush to the end game. There's a lot of like content that's that is going to take a while for some people to get through, and the game is has some content scheduled to come out, but it's like, man, that is dirty. That is dirty, and frankly, it's a little on the makes me sick side of things. So it's
It's this thing with EA. We have this dichotomy between the quality of the games and the practices of the company. Like we've heard nothing but good about Apex Legends as far as the gameplay. People who enjoy the battle royale seem to really like this game, but we've had issues with their practices in that game, the inclusion of loot boxes. And then EA, like it's hard to judge Anthem just on the quality of the game because of some of the surrounding practices. So that is a bit of a difficulty for us. Let's see here. So Dark Hollow says, I can say something about Metro. If you liked the previous two, you will love this one as well. More open areas. You can customize your weapons on the fly, craft consumables. Other than that is more Metro gameplay. And you know what? I'm okay with that because I really did enjoy the early Metro games.
It's the first person isn't for me, and even talking about Anthem, you can run around in the fort, but you run around in the fort in first person, and it's like, frankly, it's like half the time I'm like, oh, this is very uncomfortable, despite the fact that you're moving at a really slow pace and the camera controls in the fort are not that great.
Yeah, that was
so
why they
I won't be touching
walking in the fort.
Yeah. Well, no, they've made it so that you can kind of jog now. You don't run, but you just kind of walk at a faster pace. But even then, it's just why they don't give you third person, I don't know. It's just.
I thought that was just for the demo because they didn't want to mess with character creation and stuff like that. But
and there's no character creation. It's like a list of like, I want to say 24 faces that you can pick from.
Oh,
that's like they're all pre-made, and you can't change your hair or anything like that. Which again, it's like you only ever see the face in a handful of the loading screens if you have a really, 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 really slow computer. So, but it's dumb. It still is quite dumb as far as why they did it in the way that they've done it, and you know, whatever. It's so I said on the stream, the gameplay is really fun. In comparison, the gameplay from this to The Division is, I think, honestly, is far more active and engaging. You have more abilities. You have more usage for the abilities. You have a higher skill ceiling for the abilities. In The Division, you basically target somebody with, like, so one of the best, like, PvP is a good example. The best PvP mechanic is you have the grenade that just kind of sits with you and follows you around, and you use that grenade to, you know, basically attack unsuspecting people if you're a rogue in the area. And the only thing that really comes into skill is like turret placement, which is a single skill, which is frankly not as good as some of the other skills that are out there. Like there's two like little flyers that do the same thing, or not the same thing, that do a bit of a better job than the turret does now. So the turret's good for like bosses and a handful of other events, and sometimes is good in PvP, but overall it's like these abilities that you didn't have access to in the beta that are going to be more prevalent, and none of those are like high skill usage. It's just knowing when to pop them is all it is. Same thing with the health and the armor refresh. It's like you just got to know when you can press the button, basically. And then other than that, it's all about the shooting and the Twitch gameplay as far as like, you know, who gets the shot off first, because basically that's what makes you win a lot of these encounters, especially in the PvP world. So the gameplay overall, I think Anthem has definitely got a better gameplay system when it comes to the game. The itemization, there's some people out there who are saying, oh no, the itemization in The Division is way better than it is in Anthem. They clearly haven't played Anthem, and they clearly haven't been paying attention to any of the news that have come out about it, because the gameplay completely changes your character between characters. You can have you can play a good 8 different ways on just a single javelin in Anthem. It's not the same for...
I've got 15 seconds to tell you that Canadian milk is producing seconds to tell you that Canadian...
In The Division, because you just don't have that scope of how the items affect you. I can focus on, you know, straight up gunplay, or I can focus on cooldowns, or I can focus on like big combos, or I can focus on kind of like support team things, or I can focus on, and all these things you can in The Division as well. But then there's things like I could focus exclusively on like heavy weapons, which is not something that you can really do in The Division. The heavy weapons are there, but it's not as much. And it kind of goes from there. So it's like, obviously there is a sense of, you know, it's kind of cool. We posted the video of me doing the solo run through the dungeon, and I gotta say, it was engaging. It was pretty fun. And neither of them are bad experiences as far as the gameplay goes. But the story is lacking in both games as well. And this is the one thing that I had. It's like, right now there's tons of good gameplay out there. You know, Apex has come out. It's got good gameplay. Don't like the microtransactions. Anthem's out. Great gameplay. Division's coming out soon. Great gameplay. None of them have a good story at all. Like, not even in the slightest. Like, Division is a bit of a joke with their story. Again, it's like, hey, we're Division agents. We work for the government. You mean the government that's gone? Yes, that government. And now we make our own rules. So you're basically like raiders. Yeah, but we have like a moral code. Okay. You have a moral code except when you're forcing people to do whatever you tell them to do. Yes. Right. Yeah, that's not scary at all. Like, I mentioned the First Division had that hilarious rendition of Honest Trailers did that thing where they're like, you know, you're a government agent who walks into a building and sees looters, and you kill them, you execute them because they're looters. and then you proceed to loot the store yourself. And then you're running around in the dark zones and you're picking up contaminated food and water and clothing and stuff. Then you go outside of those dark zones and you give that contaminated gear to random people who give you their clothes who are also sick. It's like, it doesn't make sense. There's no logic here. It's completely through, like, it's out the window, and it's just a mess. The story in Anthem isn't that much better. It's like, so there's this Anthem of creation that it was in the process of terraforming this planet, and then it stopped, which, by the way, is basically the exact same story that was in Andromeda, so, nah. And the planet didn't, and now the planet's, like, basically a hellhole, and it's difficult to live there. So you're like, oh, okay, well, what would the best thing to do would be to, like, get control of the Anthem and have it finish or stop the terraforming process. Right now it's basically stuck in a blue screen where it keeps on, like, creating errors everywhere. So either reset it or stop it or turn it off or something, because it's, like, it's unsustainable at the current rate. Oh, no, that's bad. Wait, why is it bad? Because then you're taking the powers of creation for yourself. It's like, okay, so you're okay with it slowly killing you and all your people? Well, no, like, we learned to deal with it. It's like, okay, so why not just finish it then? And so the logical inconsistency there, and it's like, oh, and then there's this enemy that we're fighting, and they're trying to end the insanity that is the Anthem of Creation. So it's like, well, that sounds like a really good idea. Yeah, but they do so in a really militaristic way. Again, I'm not seeing what's wrong here. Well, they torture people. Like, okay, well, torture's bad, but why isn't there a faction that's trying to do that as well? Like, there's a faction within Anthem that's all they do is they just guard these important sites that can affect the Anthem of Creation. They don't do anything with them. They just guard them and keep them secret. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. It's and so the story just falls apart. So I'm very curious, and Ash will be able to figure out, because he'll be streaming it and whatnot. But I'm very interested to see how good the story is in Metro Exodus, because I really think that's probably going to be one of the better story components of the recent games that are coming out right now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that it's as engaging and that I can get as much content out of it as I got out of Dishonored 2. That's kind of my goal. I'm hoping. We'll see. I've heard that I've heard a lot of good things about it. The one negative I've heard is, or I read in an article, is that the English dub is like a bad anime dub. So, some people are recommending you play it with Russian audio and English subtitles, but I don't know that I want to do that.
Well, okay, so when it comes to that, it's like,
because it's not. It was made in, like, it was not. Oh, where's the studio based? Ukraine?
Yeah, it's based out of Ukraine.
So it's essentially, they're close to that. They're close to Russia there. So it's not it was not made by English speakers. So the English version is a dub.
Yeah. And I mean, they probably didn't have a ton of money to throw at the dub, so it's expected. Quite normally, it's expected that you're not going to get this amazing, full-on dubbed experience that some people think are, just naturally going to happen.
And anyway, I'm okay with that. Like, I think I don't think it'll bother me too much if it's a little hammy, but as long as the story is good and engaging, I'm absolutely looking forward to diving into that one. And sorry for the noise on the stream there earlier. That is curse every website that has autoplay videos and ads. Anyway,
I didn't hear that.
You didn't hear it, Saib, but that's what everyone was reacting to in the chat there. So yes, note to self: don't go to Metacritic while doing a live stream.
Yeah, no, there's a couple sites that are just like brutal with that.
Anyway,
and some of them, yeah.
I was going there to check on the scores for a couple other games, because we also had Crackdown 3, released, and we also had Far Cry New Dawn. Neither one seems to be very well reviewed.
Yeah, so Crackdown, basically what I've gotten the skinny from that is that it's not a terrible game, but it's not great either. Like, it's not a train wreck, but it's not good. And I think the biggest problem that this boils down to is the fact that they added in the destructible environment to the level and degree that they did. It really hamstrung the game as a whole. It really damaged the overall performance that the game is able to offer you, because everything is destructible. If everything is destructible, you're committing so many resources to this to just keep the game running that they weren't able to really polish up some of these areas, and that also kept the game delayed for so long. Honestly, I don't know what they were thinking, and if I was there advising them, I would have told them, I'm like, look, it's just a generational thing. You can't do the destructible environments on the current console. Either build it into the game and then turn it on once you put out a new console, or just get this game out with some decent story and some decent combat and just focus on that. But they didn't. Instead they really focused on this destructible environments thing, but then they didn't make it like, you can't really build in the game. It's not like Fortnite, or Minecraft. So there's this level of, like, why bother? Like, if I wanted around causing massive destruction and explosions everywhere, it's like there's other games that will do that are a little bit more fun, or maybe they sacrifice too much on that. So that's what I'm hearing from that. As far as the new Far Cry goes, it is basically it's like a short DLC basically, with just new areas and stuff like that. It's not, from what I'm hearing, it's not got the greatest story, but I don't know, we'll see. Definitely, like, if you played any of these games, please let us know what you think of them, especially when it comes to Far Cry and Crackdown, because these are games that we don't have the time to really get into. So I'm really curious. I want to know, like, not what reviewers are saying, because it's you can't always trust every reviewer out there. Like, we're all biased. We all have, like, kind of a conceptual thing going. But if you've been playing either of these titles because you're a fan of either of these titles, please let us know what you guys think, because it's something that I would like to get some more information on. So.
One thing I did notice on Metacritic before I got accosted by ads about Canadian milk was that for both of those games, the critic scores were hovering in sort of the 55 to 70 region, and the user scores were hovering around like the 2.5 to 3.5 out of 10.
Ooh, that's low.
That is low.
Oh, yeah, that's low. Dark Hollow, you're absolutely correct. That game should have been released before 2015. You're 100% right. Crackdown 3 should have skipped if they had skipped the destructible environment and just improved the gunplay a little bit more, gave some decent missions and stuff like that, I would have bet for sure that they would have seen a general positivity to that game, and it would have done way better in, maybe not in 2015. It was pretty stacked in 2015 as far as, like, good games and stuff like that goes. I would have said 2016 maybe, or 2014 if they could have gotten it out earlier. But no, I think 2016 would have been fine, if they had tweaked it a little bit and focused, like I said, because basically what they've been trying to improve and fix for the longest time has basically been trying to get it so that the destructible environments can function within the game. It's like, good job guys. You wasted so many years of development trying to get a feature that the hardware just couldn't keep up with. So I think
it
that's
does
really
look
what
like watching trailers and previews for it. It did look like the rest of the game really had to be scaled back to accommodate those all of the crazy things you can do and all of the destructible environments.
Well, and Minity brings up another great point. That's the same issue that Just Cause 4 suffered from, is because everything is destructible. Everything has got, you know, this destructibility thing to it, and there's so much in it, and they focus so much in it because, you know what? It looks great in a trailer. It looks really good in a trailer. It does not play well if that is your sole focus.
Yes, and well, there's the resources aspect of it too, right? Those having destructible environments that are truly dynamically destructible, that takes a ton of resources, and that's resources,
enormous amount.
That's resources you can't spend on other things, and so Crackdown 3 looked like they really had to scale back the graphics and the character models and all of that
Now here's an interesting thing, that destructible environments and things like that, it's not a, there's better ways to implement it into the game. And you know what a great example of this is, and I'm going to say the F word here, is Fallout 4. Fallout 4 system, while it doesn't come naturally, the vanilla game doesn't come with destructible environments in that same way. But if you go to the game now and you have a really strong, really powerful PC and you've optimized everything, you go in and you mod it. There's a bunch of mods that add some like destructible features to the settlements and stuff like that. It actually and also like you increase your limit, and then you get like these fortress things and all this other stuff. It actually plays really, really well. And it's far more interesting than Crackdown and Just Cause. The gameplay is, I mean, it's Fallout gameplay, but as far as like the general concept behind this is if you can make it work. If it's going to hold you back in one way, it's just not ready for it. It's just not the time. And you might be able to create a mode where it's like, you know, completely destructible, but you're sacrificing so much to just try and get this like this elusive thing that, again, it looks great on a trailer and it can build general hype, but as far as like actually, as far as of it actually getting where you need it to be, it just doesn't work. It just it just slows down the pacing, and you know, yeah,
fair enough. I mean, yeah, it's clear that the game suffered for that reason.
Jerry
Schultz says, right. Watching trailers is totally my thing. Who needs to actually play the game? Well, good point.
Yeah,
that's like people who watch the CinemaSins video before watching the movie. Did you know some people actually will watch that to decide if they're going to go watch the movie after? Like, they treat it like a movie review.
Well, I mean, it's completely spoils the plot for you and all this other stuff.
But it's also it's not supposed to be. It's a
logical thing. Like, I've talked about this before. I cannot in any way, shape, or form get any enjoyment at all out of most of the horror movies that are out that are released, not just in today's world, but also in, like, you know, the Freddy Krueger movies are on basically at the top of my list for the absolute stupidest thing that there is as far as like horror movies. Like, I mean, it really competes for that top spot with the Hellraiser series, because that's just a toilet series now. Like, the first one or two was like okay-ish for the time, but then it just, did you know there's like 20 of those things? And they're just trash. But the concept behind like good dream movies based on dreamscapes, dream worlds, like Inception is probably the best. But when it comes to this you know, this horror movie of having this Freddy Krueger guy and dreams and all that kind of stuff, it's like they throw out their own logic and rules, and then when they explain it off, it's a dream world. There are no rules. It's like, okay, if they're like, it's like, hey, I'm going to lead you into this idea in the sense of like, hey, there are rules that things have to abide by, and you can fight back based on those rules, except when we, the writers, decide to just, you know, screw with the plot, in which case that whole rule goes out the window. And it's like, oh, crying out loud. And it makes it flimsy. Now, I know some people, obviously, they're not, and don't get me wrong, I'm not in, if you're a fan of the series because you find them enjoyable or scary, or it feeds exactly what you want, 100% good. That's fine, and they do their job that way. It's like demanding that, Transformers has like legitimate plot and, character development. That's not what they're created for. I find it annoying to try and catch up with that, and I also find it annoying when people bitch about the Transformers thing. They're not. It's not. To me, it's like it's not mutually exclusive. I personally can't stand those things, but that's where the plot is so important, and I feel that this really affects these games with Far Cry and Crackdown, is where they're chasing after this concept that they have of what will sell, loads and loads and loads of copies, but they're missing the forest for the trees, or is it missing the trees for the forest? It's like there's a inconsistent step that happens there, and it becomes more and more difficult to connect in with the world because of these constant inconsistencies. And so, yeah, I think... Yeah. Jer also brings up a good point. Lost was like that, too. And 100%. It's like they didn't really hammer out the finer points, and they left too much to just, like, create up random BS when they wanted to, or when they found themselves in a hole, or when they discovered that they put themselves in a box. And that's what I mean. It's like that's my whole point, is the one thing you don't want to do when you're creating a narrative or a universe or a story or anything, is to put yourself in a box that you cannot get out of, or that doesn't go anywhere or lead anywhere. If you develop this box, and you know what other show did that really, really horribly, it's when you give when you give too much of when you give some of your main characters too much of a stronger power, and then it just becomes overpowered. Heroes was good for that too, because you had a time traveling guy who theoretically could fix pretty much everything, but then he either became superly overpowered, or he couldn't use his abilities, in which case he was underpowered. It's like, ooh, that... And there's ways to handle that. There's ways to build that into your narrative. There's ways to make that work in a particular direction that you want to take it into. However, in a handful of these cases, as we can see, when you don't do that, when you don't prepare, and when you haven't fleshed out the system, and all you're relying on is that one thing to sell your game or sell your product or sell your movie or whatever, and it falls through, that's where it falls through. So yeah. Mm-hmm. So I want to get off this topic, but that's basically, so as far as those two games goes, neither of them are looking like they're doing great in that regard. So we'll kind of see where it goes. It's Metro, obviously we haven't been able to get into it yet. I have a little bit more hope as far as the story goes there. The acting and the voice work may leave some to be, left for the wanted desire, but I suspect the story there will be a little bit better. But I mean, I haven't finished Anthem yet. I've just gotten into it, and right now I can say is the gameplay is great. The story is kind of annoying. It's presented really well. Like this, the audio is recorded pretty well. The animations are great, but the overall like story and feeling is just kind of It's like it's a you have to constantly go back to the codex to like figure out what's going on and to read into these things. So yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll keep covering those. We'll keep giving you our impressions on them, and bring you more content as we go along with that. So you are listening to the Augmented Reality Podcast, and we have tons more news to get to today. So we're going to dive into that right away here. But we love seeing everybody so active in the live chat. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, we welcome you to join our Discord community. You can find the link in the description below. It's a place where you can chat with us and other Triple S fans about all the things we love to talk about and stay up to date about everything we're doing here at the Triple S League. Click the link below to join, and be sure to say hi to us in the welcome channel. So, bunch
and
of things.
If you want to set up games, for example, there's right now somebody's looking for a group in 76. And again, we've had a lot of talk about 76. But I mean, even then, like if you just want to meet up and have fun and just have fun, join the Discord, because we're, especially in some of these other games, like especially in Anthem and that, I'm very much open to playing a couple rounds and doing some missions with some people, and you'll be able to pick my brain with a whole bunch of things. So,
yeah. Jer Schultz, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Really appreciate that very much. And he asks, any reaction to Super Mario Maker 2? Yes, actually. I was thinking about bringing it up today, but it's not kind of our typical fare. But yes, Nintendo announced Mario Maker 2 this past week, and I'm pretty excited for it. I am a huge Mario Maker fan.
And we'll actually be able to do something with this, because
we could potentially, now that Nintendo has changed their content usage policies. And I don't know if you caught
they haven't really gone back on it, as far as I've been paying kind of close attention to it, because like there's a lot of Nintendo games that they're absolutely core to my gaming experience. Is grew up on Zelda 1 and 2. Zelda, both of those games are for the most part, Zelda, both of them fall into the aspect of being an open world game, because one of the rules for like early open world games is that you can complete the game out of order. So you don't have to, like in a standard game like Mario, for example, you might be able to skip certain places in certain locations, right? But you're forced to go through worlds 1 through 10, right? Mm-hmm. And you
can't backtrack.
You can't backtrack and do other stuff. Now there is a couple of cases in Zelda, but also in Zelda 2, which was what I spent more time playing at. And I really like Zelda 2 was not actually originally created to be the next Zelda game, but they said, well, same can be said for Mario 2. The generalized experience, though, is that you can do certain dungeons out of order.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's difficult, but you can.
Well, and that's what you have to do is you can watch speedrunners take advantage of this quite heavily. You can watch, and they even do weird things like try to do dungeons in reverse order or things like that. They can have different categories, but yeah, that's the basic premise. Is
and those are the games that last a lot longer. Those are the ones that are more fun to do. Those are the ones that are really engaging. So I'm really excited to see that that Nintendo is moving in this direction. I really want to see them continue to push on this direction, because, and honestly, we talk about how we're kind of done with new stores, and we really don't want anybody to make new stores on the PC market. Honestly, this is the one exception to that. If they would develop an app or a storefront, kind of like Steam, for all Nintendo games, and be able to have, so that you could play all the Nintendo games that you've ever wanted to play on the PC as well as on their own platform, honest to God, I think that would make them probably a good like $5 billion in the first like year and a half.
I had that exact same thought earlier today, and I just thought, it's too bad that that's probably never going to happen. Then again, they did release a Mario game on the phone, so
yeah,
you never know.
So you never know, and there are emulators for this, but it's like I would like to send them my money and let them know that I would actually support them if this was something that they would do. And I know that they want to control both their products and also their code, and keep it restricted to their own platform. But honestly, I think it's holding them back. And honestly, it is definitely holding them back. If they created a store and just went nuts with it and did it in a good way, it's like, dude, the amount of stuff that you could do, the amount of volume of merchandise that you could ship, like seriously. The only reason why I don't play a lot of the games is because I don't have the space to add another console. Like I don't do the console thing. It's just bulky and gets in the way, and yeah. So
no, I know what you mean. I actually have a Super Nintendo sitting on my desk in front of me here. It's still here from when I did my Super Mario World stream over Christmas. I don't know if anyone caught that, but one of the thoughts I've had for the channel is doing like possibly like a weekly Mario stream or a weekly retro games stream. If there's any interest in that, let me know. It's tricky to find the time for stuff like that right now, but I would definitely be interested in doing something like that at some point. But my favorite, we'll close off this Mario Maker 2 topic here, but my favorite thing was one of my favorite streamers, goes by Grand Pooh Bear. I watched his reaction to the Mario Maker 2, and he's a Mario streamer almost exclusively, and a speedrunner. And he pulled a freaking Tom Cruise on Oprah, jumping up and down on his chair, watching the announcement. It was hilarious because he's kind of a he's not the most upbeat guy. He's kind of more leveled and monotone, and kind of, he's entertaining, but kind of in a laid back way. But he just went nuts. So it was hilarious to watch it. It was great. All right, so we have lots of other news to get to here. So let's move on with talking.
We have a really good news story about Cyberpunk that came. So yesterday for Valentine's Day, Cyberpunk came out, and they put out an image. Now we know the team, and we know the processes, and we know this kind of stuff, and they love putting in secret tiny bits of information. They really, 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 really do. It's just something that they love, this concept of like having and sneaking in, hidden messages in pretty much everything they do. They're not as shadowy as they think they are sometimes, but that's also, you can say that's also speculation. But this image that they put out is really, 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 really interesting, and I think we have a couple of really important dates here on this. And this is, so there's two really, really important things on this thing. First is 69, and the second is the scope on it. The scope goes F0112. So there's also like 11, with the colons beside it. But there's two things that are really important about these numbers, and that you can break these numbers down into some pretty interesting dates. And one might say, well, 69 is, that's a great Valentine's Day thing. And if I was going to be shot with a Cupid who fired a 50 cal that didn't kill me, but and if Cupid set me up with somebody, 69 is a good thing. I was just throwing that out there. That's a good thing. Okay, so one might look at that and say, oh, come on, you're reading into that. And that's what a bunch of sites are reporting on this from yesterday, saying you're reading into it if you think this means anything in particular. But it does mean something particular. Both of these numbers, if you translate them into straight dates for for this year's calendar, you get 2 dates from this. Technically you get 3, but we've already passed one. So you get 2 dates from this that are upcoming, that are important. The first one being 69, that is going to be 2 days before E3.
If you translate that as June 9th, yeah.
Yes, if you translate it as June 9th. And you might say, June 9th, right before who else last year and a couple years before that? Who does a big event on the Sunday before E3? Several people, in fact. One of them is Bethesda. So, excuse me. So this is really interesting.
Okay.
Because if they were to take the stage, and if they were to do their own showcase, And if they're as close to development as we've been saying that they are, and if they're going to be doing drip, 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 and then a big release of info at or just before E3, and if they're going to put out a big E3 content pack right as it goes out, then this is huge. This is really, really huge, because the day that you would want to do that just so happens to be June 9th. You absolutely want to do that right there. Hands down, best day to do it, and that just so happens to be the number on the gun. Is that a coincidence? It could be a coincidence. I really doubt it is. Well, so much to say
PR they have this habit. They have this history of sneaking little messages into things. And so at first I was like, oh, this is all kind of wild speculation that these numbers mean anything. But, they could. It's potential, especially when you see it lines up with E3 like that.
Well, the next number, let's focus on this next number, which is 11/12. Which is 1/12 or 11/2, depending on the way you look at that. That is November. And what have we, the Mad Queen, and a handful of other people that are really close to this project, what have we been saying for a really long time now? That the release date, their preferred release date, right now, and for the last year and a half, has always been early November 2019. That is the primary release date that we've been saying for quite a while now. That day happens to be a Saturday. Now that's a Saturday for Europe. If they were to release on sometime in the midday on that at European time or Prague time, that is actually the Friday for North America, because we're still on the, how the days and cycles things work. That is actually, again, the perfect release date if you wanted to release a game in time for it to be considered for a bunch of big major awards, such as, I don't know if you heard about this game that released last November, called real small game. I'm not sure if many of you have heard about it. Red Dead. Am I saying that right? Red Dead Redemption 2.
You were wondering if you said Red Dead right, but had no problem with redemption.
No, I'm just kidding. Now that released on the 26th of October. So theoretically, they could have, that's off by about a week, but that was perfect timing, pretty much perfect timing for that game. So November 2nd is again, that's that perfect kind of release time where you get that thing out, you get it out before the, Thanksgiving for the American holidays, you get it out at this right time. And it just eats up everything that the game has to, that the gaming community has to offer as far as attention and also purchases that time and whatnot. It's going into the holidays. It's perfect time to get it, to sit down and play through it.
Time to maybe get a new console or
one
for
your
brother for Christmas or yeah.
So this is basically lines up exactly with what we've been saying for a very long time, that this is essentially more or less a perfect time for this to be released at. And the fact that these two numbers show up with Cupid, who is aiming at a target, you might say this is their target date, which is also what Cupid does. He puts people into dates. I'm telling you, it's not rocket science, guys. They're not that smart when it comes to hiding this stuff. They like to hide this stuff. It's a very common thing that they do. So this right here, 100% to me says expect something on the 9th of June, and expect either we're going to get this game released or we're going to get another big content something that's going to come out for the 2nd of November. I'm just saying that this is probably the biggest bit of news that we have seen for quite a while. And the other cool thing that this lines up on so many levels. what does Cyberpunk think of their community? They think of their community as important as a strong relationship. So I think what they're saying by dropping this on Valentine's Day is they're saying to their community, we love you guys. Here's what we're aiming for. Here's what we're looking at to do. And this is our goal. This is what we want to do. Also, another thing here that's really interesting, on the side of the ammo clip here, you got the little bear face. You have 3 sets of notches for, successful kills and whatnot. 3 sets can also mean 3 big games that they've released thus far. They've released 3 major games that have come out that have done really, really well. The card game, not so much. It's good, but it's not a major. It's not their major title.
Right.
They've never suggested that it's a major title. So this is him lining up to make this happen for the 4th time. So this is their 4th go at this. If you assume that he takes out these targets and he gets these notches in, and if you count them not as just if you're counting them as groups, you break that down to 3. This is their 4th thing. So again, I know it's out there. I know a lot of people say, this is crazy speculation. I'm just saying that this is what their target date is, that this is what they're wanting, that this is a love letter to us, the fans, that they're saying, look, we want this to happen on this date. Here's our dates. Here's a little wink and here's a little nod. This is what we want to have happen. We're really, really interested in this. The Japanese kind of writing on little tattoo on the side of his head, I can't really figure out what that means. I'm not very good at kanji, so if anybody's looked up into it or knows a bit about that, let me know. Right now, I'm trying to run some stuff on it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard because it's kanji. It's not exactly it's not exactly easy to read, and it's definitely not easy to translate.
One Wing Talk in the chat says it says love.
Yeah.
I was going to ask though about the fact that there are 2 shells. Like he has taken 2 shots here.
Well, that's clearly that he's putting two people together. I mean, that's what I would do. That's what I would translate.
So that's just part of the Cupid.
That's part of the
not,
Cupid thing. Yeah,
that's not the.
Yeah.
Oh,
see,
okay.
Cupid. See what happens when Cupid shoots one person and it doesn't shoot the other person. When Cupid shoots one person, you know what happens? We call that a stalker relationship. Okay, and it usually ends poorly. But when he shoots 2 people and they're aimed at each other, then that's when you get genuine love. Like that's just that's when you get.
So now we know what happens when Cupid has a bad day. People go to jail, and there are restraining orders.
Restraining orders. And
this, my friends, is the top quality content that you come to the Triple S League Augmented Reality podcast for. I just know it. All right. So I'm gonna reiterate it one more time. The lineup is too good. They like hiding messages. This is their first big thing that they've dropped. This is not just a subtle nod. They put this thing out. They put this out on Valentine's Day because they love us, their gaming community. They love you, the player. Okay, they don't treat you like payers. They don't treat you like they don't treat you like EA and all these other companies do. They're actively interested in fostering a strong relationship, at making us fall in love with their products. He happens to have 2 dates that line up absolutely perfectly. The Sunday before EA, which is a major announcement date for for a lot of games, not the vast majority, but for a lot of games, that is the perfect date sign up. And 3, the November date really lines up quite well, because that's if you were going to release a game, if you're going to release a game this year, and it's going to be a AAA title, you want it between the last week of October and the first week of November. That is your release window. That is your optimum release window. It is if you put out a product and
it's one of the best games of the year, that is the time to put it out. That is when you will make the most amount of money. That is when you will get the most amount of people playing the game, is right in that window. So the fact that this is on his gun, guys, it's just too obvious. There's no other way to translate this.
It's pretty
and it falls in line with info that we have gotten, that we've been saying for well over like a year and a half, 2 years now. So we've been saying for quite a while that this lines up perfectly with this. So I'm telling you, that's what it is. That's what's going on here. And
if it was anyone other than CDPR, I'd be skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very conspiratorial, numerology, like all these things. Are things I'm skeptical of in most circumstances, but it's CD Projekt Red. I would not put it past them at all to put that kind of a meaning into the numbers, the seemingly random numbers that they put in an image like this, and have all that symbolism you discussed.
Yeah, they're big on symbolism. The core team, the core creators at that company, they love symbolism. Symbolism is important to them. They're also not native English speakers. This is another really important this is really important, and we in North America tend to forget about this. When you don't speak the language, what is the best way to communicate? When you don't speak a language and you've got a room full of people that speak, 40 different languages, what is the one thing that pretty much everybody can understand? And and it's really simple, because if you're ever inside a large room at a convention or something like that, stand up, look around, point out the one thing that everybody in that room understands, period, and that's the little fire escape symbol. It's the little dude or the exit sign. Typically it's a dude moving. That symbol, that is what is universal to everybody, and the same thing goes for CDPR. They want to communicate to a large audience. They don't want to play games with multiple languages and that kind of stuff. They want to give us a direct information. They're going to use visual imagery and simple numbers, because those are the two things that everybody understands.
You know what? You know those new exit signs that are like kind of green and the dude running through the door?
Mm-hmm.
Those always make me think of Portal every time I see them. I don't know what it is, but it looks so much like the graphics in Portal.
Portal, this is actually another great example. Portal succeeded as a game primarily because it didn't have a language barrier.
Right.
There, you could sell that as a game, as a concept, to pretty much anybody in any language very simply, and you didn't have to do very much to do it. Especially the first Portal game. It was far and beyond. It was just pure gold in the way that they created that and the way that they put it out. Same thing with Minecraft too. You didn't have to be. Minecraft's one of these things where it's like, it's about exploration and whatnot, and recipes and putting things together randomly to see what you can create. So it's. Yeah, this is hands down, guys. This is what we're looking at.
Well, question about that though. There's a couple of points being brought up in chat here. Murden says, as European, I read 1/12, which is 1st of December, and Dark Hollow concurs with that. So, are we sure this? How do we know this is referring to? It's not the month first, or sorry, the day then month, because they are based in Europe.
It's there's no special, like, September is not a great month for game releases. It's okay, it's not great. It ranks at like, bloody hell, it ranks at like 5 or 6th. And if the game is ready for September and it's going to be a major hit, most people, most publishers would say push it to the November and spend more time patching, bug fixing, and get it ready, and then either release it late October, early November. So that doesn't make too much sense. If it's just 2 updates, so if they're pointing at like another event, if they're pointing at 2 events, so like 2 gaming if it's not an update at an event plus release date, and if it's 2 events at which we will see more information at, that could also work. That could also really
I'm just
work.
wondering, because it's kind of a convention for us to read dates a certain way, and for European, people in Europe to read dates a certain way. So just wondering if there's any confusion.
Also,
there.
well, in this particular case, we have to assume that you're going to read it like you would read it if you were in America, because the game is taking place in America. It's taking place in Night City. The way that they would read this should theoretically be November the 2nd. So that's and I know CDPR is from Europe, but the point is that the game is being released, as far as the location within the lore is being released in America. So there is a little bit of a translation there that works in that regard. So it's a very good question.
Dark Hollow says maybe the 2 bullet rounds are E3 and Gamescom. Maybe. Anyway, we could speculate about this all day.
You can also,
we'll move on from here.
You can also read it for another good point that Mirrodin puts out is you can also read it for December. So there's a couple different ways that you can look at this. So,
but they definitely, if you read them sort of with the American convention, those are 2 dates that definitely line up very nicely.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have some other things we wanted to get to. Rick and Morty season 4. Some info has dropped about that. I don't know anything about this. You want to?
No. Need to be clear. Info has not dropped about this. This is inside info. This is info from my.
Like I said, I'm in the dark about this.
My content. Yeah, we did.
So I've just told me add Rick and Morty season 4 to the title of the live stream. It's like, okay.
So this is information that I have on contact sources, and it came up last night. It was really interesting. I really like the show. I'm a big fan of the show. I really felt that, like, I love talking about it, and we've thrown around the idea of doing a couple episodes or some videos about Rick and Morty. But this basically boils down to some info that I have as far as when we're expecting to get season 4 out. And I heard a couple of things being thrown around recently, and somebody contacted me, and we were talking about stuff, and we were trading some info, and this came up, and I took this stuff, and I've spent a couple hours last night putting it together with some other stuff, going to do some looking around. For example, one of the things that I did is I pulled up the studio that actually works on the animation, which is Bardell Entertainment, which is based out of BC, Canada. And what I can tell you is that I have a strong leading source. Now, things are obviously still in production. Things are still being worked on. But it appears as if we will get season 4 this fall. And that we know a couple things that they're hoping to hit a 19. They're hoping to get this out in 2019, and that the seasons will also go from 10 episodes to 14 episodes. But it does appear as though we're going to be getting this in the fall for sure, which means this is really exciting for us, Rick and Morty fans. Because this means we're going to get it for sure this fall. We're not going to have to wait till 2020. And then on top of that, the game is going to, the show is going to run over into the new year. So it's going to run into 2012. 2020, not 2012. Good Lord. I'm really exhausted right now. So this is great news. It's really exciting news. I'm hoping that you guys find it exciting as well. I have more info that I could put out on it, but right now I'm gonna stick with what I can absolutely 100% verify, and that is if there's no major delays, this show will start airing looks like it's going to start airing in October. Looks like for now, and again, things can change. It's not its primary consumption is the internet, so they don't exactly have a requirement to release it as to a set television schedule. But for the most part, what we can see is that this thing is probably going to be releasing in the last 2 weeks of October of this year. That might get pushed back. It might be tweaked a little bit, but that seems to be where we're headed with that. So, yeah, exciting. I was happy to get this info, so I'm spreading a bit of it that I can without getting into too much trouble to you guys if you're interested in that. If you find that interesting, please let me know, because I'll know whether or not this is something that I should keep pushing and fishing out some info for. If this is something that you guys like, then by all means hit me up, and then of course we'll see how that actually goes. This is not a source that I use frequently, so we'll see how that racks up for this year. So that's the first little bit. I hope it pans out.
All right, excellent. And to round out the show today, we're going to dive back into the world of the Outer Worlds. We have some information keeps dropping about that day by day from Game Informer with their exclusives, and so there was a couple of things that we wanted to talk about here today. Actually, well, there's an article about choice in the world that just released today on Game Informer. We're not going to get too much into this, but it basically just emphasizes a lot of the choice that you're going to have, that they really are trying to build a game that lets you play your way. But there is still one sort of central storyline, and, there's major events that you need to, that all players will hit, regardless of your play style, which, makes sense for a game this size.
Standard for Obsidian games.
The example they use is in the first part of the game, you need to find a power regulator for your ship. So you have to do that regardless of your play style, but there are a lot of ways you can accomplish that goal. So, yeah. So, interesting article. You can read it on Game Informer if you're interested in that. But what we really wanted to talk about was the info that came a couple days ago, the wildest weapons in the Outer Worlds. There was an interesting article posted about the science weapons, and what really intrigued me about this is the shrink ray, because I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I'm fascinated by games and movies that play with scale, that episodes where character gets shrunk or something, and you're on on a different scale. And I played that game called The Spy Who Shrunk Me a little while back, where you can actually shrink yourself, or you can shrink your enemies, and I speculated that this would be fascinating if they incorporated it into like a larger game as a concept. Now, this isn't exactly that. I don't think you can shrink yourself in Outer Worlds, but you do have a weapon called a shrink ray that I believe, if I understand properly, it can temporarily shrink enemies, and it gives them a damage, like a defense nerf, basically. Like, they take more damage. So that sounds fascinating to me, and it looks really cool, too. But there's also things...
So you're going to be able to squish them?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that would... The game you were playing, the Spy Who Shrunk Me, that... the way that they handle that is hilarious and beautiful.
It is. I mean, it's a pretty silly game, but it just the concept,
she bends down, she picks up the body, then she can throw the little guy or put him in the garbage or any. It's that is hilarious. And
when the first time I fired the shrink ray in that game was at an enemy agent who was sitting on the toilet, and I lost it laughing. If you watch the video, it was so funny. Because the guy just plunk.
Drops
He's just plunk into
the toilet.
Oh, it felt so wrong, but it was also
it is wrong, because you're dooming them to a horrible fate. It's not only that, it's like oh, I don't want to talk about it too much, but that is absolutely brilliant. And I mean, we're not going to have that exact same feature.
It's not going to be. Yeah, it's not going to be that. It's not going to be exactly that. But this shrink ray is a thing in the game that apparently you can in some way, for some duration, shrink enemies. And what's also interested is in the wilderness of the Outer Worlds, there's something they call megafauna, which are really large creatures. And and they're like scaled up versions of regular sized creatures that you'll encounter. But apparently you can shrink these mega ones down a bit and give them, so they become sort of moderately sized, and then they, take more damage, that kind of thing. So, yeah, really interesting. But this shrink ray is a class of weapon in the game called a science weapon. And this is really interesting. These are going to be really unique weapons with unusual effects, and your ability to use them scales up with your science stat. So
yes, yeah, because like this is an RPG game. You're going to have various ways that you can play, and if you want to play as the nerdy guy, you can play as the nerdy person. So the way that they've set this up, and the way that we've had these games in the past, is that you can play as like a gunslinger, a brute, or a nerdy genius. And so this is them confirming that this has not gone anywhere. You still have weapons that are best used by somebody who's got a brain behind them, and this is really, really, really cool. And the amount of stuff and the amount of effects that they have going forward that this can affect is really big. And it's very exciting to see this, and it's really nice that they came out and mentioned this, because again, you don't always have this. We have more and more companies that move away from this as a generalized concept, and it sucks. It really, really does suck sometimes. So yeah, this is exciting. I'm really excited to see where they go from here.
Yeah.
With that.
So apparently, these are weapons that you can improve and mod just like other regular weapons. There's plans to include 5 science weapons, 1 for each category of weapons. So like light melee, heavy melee, handgun, which that one's the shrink ray, long gun, and heavy gun. And if they turn out to be popular, there's a quote here from Tim Kaine: "If these turn out to be popular, we could easily put additional ones out as DLC. So instead of 1 in every category, maybe we'd have 2 or 3.
Yeah,
but at least there's supposedly going to be 5, so it's going to be really interesting to see what they all do. They don't describe many of them, but they describe one weapon that they originally designed to be a science weapon.
You said to be.
What? Okay, or not to be. So they had a heavy weapon that shoots bouncing fireballs. This was originally going to be one of the science weapons, but they decided to make it just a regular weapon because apparently it wasn't weird enough. So that's fancy. That's interesting. So we're gonna get some weapons with some crazy effects. It'd be cool if we got a portal gun or something like that. Like, I don't. That might be asking a little much, but yeah.
Yeah, you might be able to stretching there.
To portal your enemies around would be cool. So JR asks, if you were to shrink them, wouldn't the square-cube ratio make them nearly indestructible? I mean, that's a good question. Actually, I had this... So, I've been watching Marvel movies with my wife. We're really enjoying watching all the superhero movies together. But Ant-Man, I love both of the Ant-Man movies. But I got curious, because they explain the tech in the movie as it reducing the distance between the atoms when you shrink something. So the distance between the atoms gets smaller. But that means there's the same amount of atoms in the object. So if they shrink a car, shouldn't that shrunk miniaturized car be just as heavy as a regular sized car? And yet they pick them up and carry them around in this case.
That is the one area in that which kind of like the science and the lore on that is somewhat complicated, because the other thing that happens, which they explain, is that you still have the full punching force of what you would normally have at that size. However, instead of instead of, punching somebody with a fist that's the size of a fist, you're punching them with the exact same power with a fist that's the size of a needle. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if you've tried, but if you were to use a needle size, let's say it's made out of really, really strong material, you can punch through pretty much anything, including metal, just with the normal weight and power that you would have as a
it'd be like a bullet hitting
moving your hand, which they do describe in the first one. They mention that you have to know how to pull your punches, because if you were to punch them hard enough, you could put a hole through them, the size of a truck, because your ratio to size is you're not losing power when you're that small. You're gaining power. So that's a very interesting way of them putting it, and it's really interesting to see. Well, how does this work in this one particular scenario? Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting.
I wonder what did they ever try to explain it in the original lore?
Oh, I think it's been explained numerous times in the original comic books and the lore and that kind of stuff for quite a while. Marvel does a pretty good job of explaining a lot of stuff. However, one of the things that and it really annoys me, because there's a couple of scenarios where it really, really gets under my skin, where it's like, lore junkies will accept anything said or anything stated in a comic book as 100% accurate and true, and given a time where there's some confusion on it, they will naturally often side with whatever side they personally want to agree with. So, for example, adamantium is unbreakable. There's nothing that can break adamantium, except forces that are like, strengths and forces that go beyond, like Thanos with the glove, right? That he's able to rip reality apart, so it's technically it's not going to find too much of a difficult time ripping adamantium apart. That's a running theory. Yes, it's really cool. There is this one thing, though, when it comes to adamantium, where it's like, a certain vibroblade can cut through it from time to time. They claim. So the wielder of a weapon is claiming that they can cut through adamantium, and has at no point shown that they actually have the ability to do so. And yet still certain people will jump on this and go, see? Totally true. And you're like...
So that they'll argue about this hypothetical that's happening in the comic book.
So this boils down to... This would boil down to... I would strongly recommend that you understand that this boils down to the generalized concept with what they're talking about here, is that they're explaining it to Ant-Man, right?
Yeah.
Ant-Man may not necessarily have the best head on his shoulders when it comes to understanding this stuff. So therefore, if they were to not necessarily embellish the truth, but maybe they're communicating the truth in one of the few ways that they think that he can understand it.
Well, I can't remember if they're actually explaining it to him, or under what context it's said. I just remember the scientist saying, I started experimenting with, changing the relative distance between the atoms. So,
yeah.
You can. We're talking about a universe that has wizards and X-Men and Thor. So really, I'm not terribly concerned about trying to understand every little detail of it, because there comes a point where you just suspend disbelief and accept it. Like, okay, things are different in this world. But yeah, it was interesting. Sometimes when they try to explain something in a story, it actually makes it worse. That's one thing I've learned.
Yes.
Sometimes if they try to explain too much of how something works, it just kind of it actually causes more problems than it solves. But here's a question that I came up with last night. So, my wife and I were watching Deadpool for Halloween. That would have been more appropriate. Valentine's Day date. We watched Deadpool.
1 or 2?
The first one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I haven't seen.
That's a pretty decent dating. date movie.
But the question that crossed my mind is, what happens if you cut Deadpool exactly in half? Do you get 2 Deadpools? That could be an interesting plot point in like a future movie. He gets sliced in half top to bottom and grows into 2. I don't know. That could be funny. That's my Friday afternoon brain, everybody. Welcome to Ash's Head. And
he has been smashed to bits before, and I think there's a part of his like there's a part of him that is the entity, right? And I think it's that one thing to which everything stems from.
Mm-hmm. But what part of him is that? Because he's been shown to recover from brain damage.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the second movie, like I've said, but
it's definitely something in his brain, because like, you know, otherwise when they take off his when like as it is, like, you know, he gets his hands cut off or whatever, why don't his hands grow back the missing body, right? Why is it the body that grows back? And I think that there's a part of his brain where it all stems from essentially as a central core, and that if you were to take that little piece and move it around within his own body, the healing thing just moves it back to where it should be. Hence, like, you know, a bullet going through the head or something like that, and versus like, you know, him getting put into a blender or something like that. So it's
I get what you're saying. I get where it's kind of like the question
and
that came up on
the rule for his power goes, which isn't really hinted at. The harder the trauma and the more like battle ready he is, the faster the regeneration. So it's like if somebody were, I shouldn't be talking about it because I haven't studied it in depth, and I don't know the new rules on it or the rules that they're operating under. But that's pretty much the premise, and I don't want to drag it on for hours and hours and hours. Yeah. So
no, fair enough. But I still think it's funny to picture him getting sliced in half and then having 2 of them. I think that'd be if you cut his brain directly in half, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it would be that's definitely a hilarious thing, and I do believe that's a premise for. I do believe there's a couple premises for where he's been walking around, and that is what's going on. So
that'd be interesting. Anyway, that's about it for the Augmented Reality podcast today. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and thank you for the great conversation in the chat. I want to thank our Patreon supporters, Old Man Manson, and our 2 anonymous supporters. I want to thank Jer Schultz for the generous super chat today, and all of you who are involved in our channel, involved on our Discord server. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to slam that like button and also subscribe if you enjoy this weekly content. If you're listening after the fact on SoundCloud, we thank you for your follows and likes. On iTunes for subscribing and reviewing the show. On Spotify, following, subscribing, whatever you do there. We really appreciate all of that, and feel free to join us on Tuesdays and Fridays at noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time for the live show on YouTube, where you can interact with us and other listeners and be a part of the discussion. The Augmented Reality Podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, live streams, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Ashenity, and on behalf of Cyberpunk, thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.